you doing? My name's Jesse. It's September 21st, 2024. What have I been working on? Well, I've been working on some more ideas from the Guthrie Trap videos. In one of his videos, he took the pentatonic patterns that we all know really well and used them to arpeggiate chords in a given key. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. Let me try working on that. So I started working in the key of E. So let's start, in the key of E, you got E major, F sharp minor, G sharp minor, A major, B major, C sharp minor, D sharp diminished, and then E again. I'm saying this for me, not you. I know you already know this stuff. So let's take E major, for instance. Right? Pretty straightforward. We all know it really well. And we know, wherever there's an E, odds are that's where you can play it. So that's E major. Now let's start on F sharp minor, for instance. Cool. G sharp minor. Alright. A major. B major. C sharp minor. D sharp diminished. And then we finally end up on E. Right? Only Guthrie's really amazing at it, and he can go up and down and make it sound amazing. I got training wheels on, but here's where I'm at. So, I said, that's great. Now, how can I apply that in some way? And it just so happened I was talking to somebody about the first books that we got as kids that we studied out of. And I talked about a book that I got when I was 13. And it wasn't this one. It wasn't Guitar Tricks by Jay Friedman. It was More Guitar Tricks by Jay Friedman. Guitar Tricks by Jay Friedman was published in 1979. I think this one was published in 1980, 1981, something like that. And I found this when I was 13 years old in Campbell's Music in York, Pennsylvania, which is still open, by the way. Say hi to Bob. And as a 13-year-old, I was like, wow, that's cool. That just looks so cool. We were easily amused at 13 or 14. Anyway, when I was a kid, I pulled some ideas from it, but I didn't really have a complete background or understanding of things to get the full value out of it. And I found it as an adult, and when I went back and looked at it, I realized that what Jay was doing wasn't tricks. He was showing you chord voicings up and down the fingerboard. He called it tricks just to sucker you in. I actually got to talk to Jay over the phone once, and I talked to him about that. I was like, that was a brilliant idea. He goes, yeah, it was, wasn't it? So, thanks, Jay. Anyway, at the end of his first Guitar Tricks book, he had this really cool chord progression that he was a master of really unique chords. So he started with the E, the free-for-all E, but then he would go to E major 7, A over E, and then B11. And I haven't played with too many 11th chords, but I love that. I'm going to have to learn about B11 chords a little more. So I turned that into a loop that kind of sounded like this. And I would try and play these patterns over it and listen to how they sound. You know how hard it is to play slow? It's not as hard as it is to play fast, but it's just about as hard. This little loop taught me that my timing needs work. So anyway, listen to the E major. Obviously it's going to work. E major over an E major chord, right? Let's try F sharp minor. Not quite as pleasing. It's a little slightly menacing, which could be useful in some places. G sharp. Like that one too. Clams are real, folks. Nice. Makes sense that C sharp minor would work because it's the relative minor. Then D sharp. I really like that too. And obviously he's going to work. So I found that really informative, and I'm continuing to work on it. Now, what have I been working on it with? Well, a Starcaster. I hesitate to say Fender Starcaster, though it does say Fender on the headstock. It's probably closer to a Squier. It's an interesting story of how I got this guitar. For years I taught guitar at a local music store. Probably illegal, but you know, what do you want? And one of my students was a guy named Tom. Tom was a little older than me, and Tom, who's probably watching by the way, hey Tom, how you doing? A man of boundless enthusiasm and infectious positive attitude. Really is. And he came and he wanted to learn enough that he could back himself up at church, and so he wanted to learn a bunch of Christmas songs. So we were working on Christmas songs together. And he took lessons with me for a couple of years. And then he felt the call to study in the seminary. So I get a text message last spring, something like that. I want to sell my gear. And I was like, okay. And he had an Epiphone Crestwood Custom. He had a Boss Katana 100. He had this guitar. And he had a little Squier practice amp. He said, I want to sell it all. And I was interested in the Epiphone. I had set it up for him previously, and I played it, and I liked the way it played. I thought it was pretty cool. And so I said, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll help you out. So I made him an offer and went and picked the stuff up. And I gotta confess, when he would bring this guitar to lessons, I would tune it up for him, but I never really liked the guitar that much. I just looked at it and went, cheap. You know, I mean, and it didn't play great. It had the cabbage making fret sprout on the end. The pickups didn't really have any character to them. It wasn't what I called pleasant sounding, but I bought it because I was trying to help him out. And I was like, I can always flip it, right? My game plan was to keep the Epiphone, keep the Boss, and flip this, right? Well, I don't want to sell a guitar that plays like junk if I can help it, so I figured I'd give it a setup. So I set the pickup height on it, the first thing, because I was like, wow, the pickups are really low. I set the pickup height, and all of a sudden the sound started to bloom. I was like, wait, this doesn't sound quite as bad as I thought it did. In fact, I don't think it's got a right to sound like this, So I got a file and I knocked the fret sprout off of it and I set it up and I started playing it, and the more I played it, the more I was just, I can't believe that this guitar that's this cheap sounds this good. How is this? How is this possible? And ultimately, ironically, I ended up selling the Epiphone and the Katana because when I played them over time, at some point I just said, not me. But I've been playing this a lot to the expense of my other instruments, really, to be honest with you. The fingerboard actually feels like a real Fender neck. It sounds kind of silly, but if you've played Affinities or Bullets or something like that, they always kind of felt like a toy in my hand. But this actually feels like it's got some space to it that you can work with. The only thing I've done, I didn't even change the pickups. I know they're cheap ceramic magnet pickups, but I like the sound of them. You know, Jimi Hendrix used ceramic pickups in his guitar in Woodstock. It was okay for him, right? The only thing I have done is I replaced the pots with CTS pots, and the only reason why I did that is because I really wanted a blend pot on my Strat. I don't. Everybody's got their own take on things. I don't feel the need for more than one tone control, to be perfectly honest. And with a blend pot, I can take the 1 position or the 5 position and I can blend in the opposite pickup. So if I'm in the 1 position, what is wrong with this guitar? The one thing I will say is I'm going to have to do a little work on the nut because I think it's binding in places. But notice, I roll this pot. Well, let me go back here. Roll this pot. Slowly brings in the bridge pickup until you have the one, the neck and the bridge without the middle, which is a sound I really like, for no other reason. I mean, if you can play Buckaroo on a guitar, how cool is that, right? So in the 2 or the 4 position, it will bring in whatever pickup isn't currently engaged. So in the 2 position, you've got these 2 pickups in. All of a sudden, you got all 3 in. And in the 4 position, you got these 2 on. And I really like the sound of 3 single coil pickups engaged all at once. It's ethereal, So I'm hanging on to it, I think. I'm hanging on to it long enough that I put Dad on it. So. And I thought about this guitar and how this guitar is full of contradictions. This is a cheap guitar. It's the cheapest guitar probably that you could get at one point. This is the guitar that they sold in Christmas packs at Target or someplace like that. It's a guitar that kids learned on and maybe got frustrated with because maybe they weren't set up really well. Maybe they sat in a closet and collected dust until they got shipped off to Goodwill or sold at a yard sale or something like that. It's not a guitar that anybody would necessarily the first thought, I'm going to play a gig with this. I practice with this. I rehearse with this guitar with the band I'm playing with right now. And so, and yet, this guitar sounds really good to me. I have a real Strat. And I'm not saying it's better than that Strat, but I'm saying it shouldn't be as close to that Strat as it is, but it is. Contradictions. I'm teaching a creative writing class at the new school I'm working at, and we've been studying characters. Again, I'm not a creative writer. I'm learning along with them. But we've been studying characters, and one of the first things you learn is that the best characters are the ones that have contradictions in them. And it turns out that's because we as human beings have contradictions within ourselves. And when we see a character with contradictions, we recognize the humanity that is us in them. You know, think about 1977 when the first Star Wars movie came out. And I was 8 years old, and I was excited because it was the first movie that I got to see by myself at the movie theater. It was such a momentous occasion that I dressed up for it. And when Darth Vader walked out on the screen, I nearly crapped myself. But Darth Vader didn't start becoming a truly interesting character until the subsequent movies. And I'm talking about the Empire Strikes Back and the one after that, Return of the Jedi. I'm 55 years old. I have no use for the other six. But it isn't until the second and third movie that he develops as a character. Why? Because he's got these contradictions within him. He's the penultimate of evil, and yet he loves his son. He wants to serve the Emperor, and yet he wants to save his son from the Emperor's grasp. That's humanity. And so I see the contradictions in this guitar, and I'm guessing that I'm attracted to this guitar because of them. Anyway, hope you found that entertaining. Hello from the past. My name's Jesse.